thank you, everybody. Glad to be here today. I see a lot of friendly faces and friends in the audience, and so happy to talk today about the explosion of growth that's really happened in exchanges the last year or two. And we're lucky to have a great panel with a lot of folks that have a lot of experience in that space. So why don't we just go ahead and jump right in by having them introduce themselves. Why don't we start right here?
Hi everyone, so I'm Aurelien, I'm the founder and CEO of Gatecoin. We've started in 2013 and launched in 2015. We are the largest exchange in Hong Kong when banks are letting our accounts open. And we're also the first exchange to list Ethereum, also first exchange to be involved with ICOs. So we're both an exchange and a platform to syndicate and raise funds for ICOs.
Very good.
Hi everyone, I'm Konstantin. I came here from Czech Republic. I'm the CEO of Changelly. Changelly is an instant exchange service. So we operate in worldwide, in the US markets, Korea, and also Japan.
That's great.
Hello, my name is Obi Nwosu. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Coinfloor. We're a group of cryptocurrency exchanges that focus exclusively on institutional and sophisticated investors and traders. And we're known in the space for having one of the longest running exchanges in the UK and also a recent offering, which is the first physically delivered cryptocurrency futures exchange.
That's great, thank you.
So my name is Mike Kayamori. I'm the founder, CEO of QUOINE. We started in 2014, and we're the first global exchange to be regulated and licensed in Japan. And it's my great pleasure to share my experience with you.
Great. Well, sort of the thing I think you all share is having to adapt to this hypergrowth. And I'm curious to hear from each of you about how you've had to either change your process or change your business model or even your technology stack to accommodate all of the new users that have flowed into the ecosystem. We've seen a lot of exchanges have trouble keeping up. Even the biggest and well-founded groups have had trouble keeping up with this wave of new users. And so curious what you can share with the audience today about where you think that technology stack has had to improve and where it's going.
That's a very good question. It's a regular issue for startups, obviously, but for exchanges where latency is so critical, it's an even more important difficulty. So in terms of technology, it's really a matter of having the proper architecture, proper also code base and tech stack. But beyond pure technological challenges, are also all the processes, like for instance, onboarding. I mean, on our side, we used to have a very manual onboarding. At some point, you can't keep up the pace with the growth when your registrations are multiplied by 50. Suddenly, you can't suddenly recruit 50 times more customer support or compliance officers to handle the tickets or the registration. So you need to also think of automation of those processes using AI, using existing solutions. So it's definitely an important challenge.
So it would be fair to say you've had to move towards automated KYC, AML, the different compliance checks in order to really scale.
Yeah, and same for transfers, for instance. Having to process suddenly a few 100,000 transfers within a day, you can no longer rely on banks you used to work with that had a fully manual process. You need to find banks with APIs or at least CSVs, for instance. Unfortunately, it doesn't exist yet in Hong Kong, so we had to look for other providers to be able to keep on delivering the service.
Now, with Changelly, you guys have a different model. I'm curious how the scaling has affected the way you operate your business.
Yeah, so actually last year or previous year, it was 2 waves of growth, like in the beginning of the year. Just imagine that your business is growing. Today you have 10 customers and tomorrow you have 100 customers or even 500 customers in a week. It was an exponential growth. And the main issues we have experienced it as we are an exchange broker. So we are trading on Bittrex, Poloniex, Binance now, and we experienced issues with the API of the main exchanges, many stack transactions, and also bloating blockchains. And we have grown our support team from like a few people at the beginning of the previous year to 15 people now. And actually we are educating the markets because the most popular question in support is like, what is Bitcoin address? How I can send Bitcoins to my email address or my home address? And it's, yeah, and in December we have experienced like 30,000 new registrations on Changelly every day. So it was a huge wave. Yeah, and we have upgraded our stack of technologies. We are doing some parallel merchant transactions for exchange, and we have grown our team like 3 or 4 times. Yeah.
Well, Obi, I've known about Coinfloor. Really, you guys are one of the first exchanges. I remember back in 2013 when I got into the space in 2012 and 2013. So curious, you've seen a lot of the whole evolution, how that's changed for you guys and how you've adapted.
The quiet exchange, because we've been around a long time, but people, unless you're institutional, you might not know us. But it's interesting, what we've seen, and I think it's similar for a lot of people in the space, is that there are 2 types of issues that you face when you have scaling like this. One is the technical, and the other is the operational. Now, because of our focus, we have very demanding, rightfully so, clients for many years now. And so on the technical front, we've had to deal with people who want low latency, high frequency trading, etc., high availability. So the increase in traffic from a technical point of view wasn't a significant issue for us, luckily. We have an incredible central limit order book matching engine, and so that wasn't a problem. However, on the operational side, there were significant challenges scaling. Every week for between November and December and so on, we were hiring more people in every department: compliance, operations, customer service, etc. The other thing we did as well is accelerate our strategy towards continuing our focus on institutional and sophisticated investors and traders. So some of our offerings that were the remaining retail-esque offerings, we stopped in December. We increased our deposit limits, which we continue to do every year. So we just focused more as well. So that helped us handle the scale on the other side.
So by narrowing your audience to folks that were at the high end of the scale, you were able to achieve that. Got it.
But that didn't stop everything. The growth was massive, so we still had to hire every week.
It's a good problem to have. Yeah. Mike?
Yeah, so I think I shouldn't be redundant with what everybody has already shared, but maybe I can share some numbers. Right. So 2.5 years ago, or December of 2015, our largest volume at that month was about 100 million. Right? And last December, 2017, we did close to 30 billion, right, on transaction volume. Also being a regulated exchange, there's certain areas like governance, audit, risk, support, that there's certain guidelines that you need to meet being a registered exchange. So the biggest thing that I underestimated, so previously I used to work at SoftBank. Right? I used to support hyper-growth companies, providing them with capital. So I underestimated, or I probably underappreciated how CEOs manage hyper-growth, right? So from our perspective, like a year ago, we were about maybe 30 people. Now we're close to 200. And this is excluding our support team, which is now 24/7 out of Manila, 3 shifts. And so full-time equivalent, it's close to 100 people there. So this is in addition to our team. And when that happens, so we brought in a chief people's officer, and we have like over 800 positions, pipeline of people, candidates right now. So getting the right leads are important in managing that. So when that happens, and for anybody who needs to grow that much to cope with your growth, it's all about people, right? So now I spend a lot of time, other than the regulatory side and all these, is how to manage, have a shared vision, how to manage team, delegate to the next C level and the C-1s. And that's what's going to be the most critical thing, because you're only going to be as good as your people.
That's great insights. You had
No,
something, Obi?
I was going to echo Mike's words. Something that my team get probably very bored of me saying is 4 Ps: philosophy, people, process, product. And at the CEO level, I spend most of my time thinking about the philosophy: why are we here? Why are we doing what we're doing? And then people. So hiring an amazing group of people to deal with putting in the right processes and delivering the right product.
That's great. Well, I want to dive into the future. As we all know, this ecosystem moves very quickly. And the term on everybody's lips is decentralized exchanges. And I'm curious for each of you how you plan to adapt or embrace decentralized exchanges based on your business model, based on which use cases you think it will actually be applied to, and go from there.
I mean, our core businesses, I mean, for the 3 of us, are exchanges with a high liquidity. So on those exchanges, you need, to get liquidity, you need liquidity providers. To get good liquidity providers, you need to have very low latencies. So you can't have a very liquid exchange with very tight spreads in a decentralized infrastructure because of the latency. As of today, at least, I mean, there are projects like yours that aim at improving this situation. So to me, it's not a direct competition, at least at the moment. Could be interesting to evaluate or to assess it for OTC trades later on. But to me, I'm also a bit cautious about people that are saying that centralized exchanges are not safe and decentralized exchanges will be safer, because so far from what we see, smart contracts are not are not a science that people are mastering. So, and since you don't have mechanism to roll back transactions, roll back processes on decentralized infrastructures, I don't really see a benefit in terms of security. And then we can, I mean, even on a centralized exchange, you can use multi-sig, you can use already some technology to, you can use also hardware wallets, like what Ledger is doing, to enable people to plug directly the hardware wallet to the exchange. Is to me a much better improvement in terms of security than a smart contract or a decentralized exchange.
Interesting. So you'd say latency is still the biggest challenge to liquidity, and even though you can remove custodial risk by becoming decentralized, there are other risks to consider. Okay.
Yeah, so actually it's, this year most probably will be a year of decentralized exchanges. But I suppose it's a bit overhyped because now 99% of trading volume is still going through centralized exchanges, and only on centralized exchanges you can trade with high frequency algorithms trading. It's impossible for the on-chain order book to trade so fast. So latency and liquidity is the main issues of decentralized services. But I believe decentralized services it's useful for OTC trading when you want to trade anonymously and without the counterparty risk. It's custody-free solutions. And so I believe in atomic swaps technology for the cross-blockchain interactions. And so we are also working on some projects based on that technology. So, but I suppose that centralized businesses, centralized exchanges will still coexist with the new decentralized services.
Got it.
So one of the reasons why we focus on the market sector we focus on is because we think there are 3 different types of exchange. One is institutional focused exchanges that allow fiat to crypto. There are retail focused exchanges that allow fiat to crypto. And then there are crypto to crypto exchanges. Crypto to crypto exchanges, our thesis is that eventually most of them will become decentralized. So I think we don't deal with that sector of the market, but if you do, then you'll have to keep an eye on that. There are services out there that provide solutions, alternative solutions to market making. I think, for example, there's the Bancor protocol that effectively provides an infinite liquidity in inverted commas solution, and I'm sure there are others who are working on that. Yes, so that's the issue.
So you think it'll be most relevant to fiat pairs in the future? Centralized exchanges?
Centralized, oh yes. I think if you're having to touch if you're a bridge between the fiat world the regulated fiat world and the crypto world, then you will always need some sort of centralized.
The legacy
body.
economy needs
But
another
if you're dealing
party
crypto
to
to
deal
crypto, then it's possible to. If it's possible to do it in a purely technical way, it will be done in a purely technical way.
Got it.
So I have a little bit of a different view, and I look at it from a customer's perspective, right? Customers want an exchange, whether if it's decentralized or centralized, that's fast, better, cheaper, there's a lot of liquidity. That's what they want. I mean, only the purists or someone maybe from an ideology-driven perspective might want to have an argument around which is better or superior or all these things. But if you look at from an average Joe or someone like my wife who wants to just enjoy a product or buy a cryptocurrency, they don't have to worry about whether if it's decentralized or centralized. But the people who will worry about is the regulators. Like for example, in Japan, I shared it with the audience yesterday, is they deem cryptocurrency as fiat, as a currency, which means they will control, right? They won't want oversight. They won't want full KYC. They want to make sure that all of these exchanges do customer asset segregation, do proper custodial services, all these things where you cannot say, hey, because we're a decentralized exchange, that's not our responsibility. You'll go to jail, right? So from that perspective, yes, especially if you become big. If you're kind of a niche and you're decent, that's fine. But if you become big, if you become large, and if you move within your platform or within your protocol, a vast amount of store of value, they will come. Tax authorities will come. They will come. And if you're the platform owner or you're the creator, they will come and get you. So that's how I look at it.
One of the, go ahead, you want to
if I can
respond?
just add something, because since we're all these centralized exchanges, I wouldn't like us to sound like Kodak saying digital photography is going nowhere. I mean, compliance and regulation is a very good, important point. So, and what you said also about the interface with banks, obviously, currently with fiat payments having to be processed via bank transfers, you have to have a central point of entry. Probably later on, when we have decentralized identification processes and fiat currencies on the blockchain, maybe we could have crypto-to-crypto exchanges that would serve the same, that would provide the same services as us today. But yeah, I mean, I guess you can comment on it, but I really don't see decentralized infrastructures being able to provide the same latency.
So I would be remiss if I didn't bring up the topic of the regulatory environment that's really evolved a lot this year. We've seen a lot of jurisdictions weigh in on currencies, utility tokens, security tokens. Different jurisdictions have defined these things in different ways. Up until now, we've really seen a lot of currencies, we've seen a lot of utility tokens. Now some regulators are saying some of these are securities. A lot of exchanges have moved to remove those tokens that regulators in certain jurisdictions believe are securities, right? We've seen a lot of delistings from some of the exchanges. I'm curious where you see the path forward for fully compliant security tokens. There are a number of platforms that are emerging to issue that follow all the local guidance for KYC, AML, accredited investors. I'm curious, any of your platforms you foresee in the next 12 months, or do you think it's further out before exchanges are really able and have the licenses to list securities among the tokens that are traded on your exchanges, or whether you'll stay entirely in the realm of currencies and utility tokens?
I'm a real believer in security tokens. To me, that's where ICOs should go, like to have a kind of intermediary regulatory layer between private and public companies. And then we could have other type of securities, not only stocks, obviously bonds, any type of asset can be tokenized and traded, transferred on the blockchain. We see some jurisdictions that are having a super open framework like Gibraltar, Malta. to me, it's a very positive development for the industry, but it's not sufficient because, to me, what's very important with security regulation is the protection of investor, and that's really what's necessary. Like yesterday, we were looking at some statistics. Apparently, 57% of the ICOs that raised funds in 2017 already disappeared. So it's a lot of money and a lot of investors that got screwed. And we always talk about market manipulation, insider trading, and so on. To me, it's very important for the industry to have a framework that would protect those investors and that would help getting even more money flowing into that industry. So currently, I'm French, so there's a lot of debates in Paris, and we're part of it actually. And so far, they look to try to find a really balanced approach. To me, it's very necessary to have something that is balanced, obviously, not like in the US. Something that would be a really intermediary between private, public equities. Maybe something that there could be also like several levels of regulation depending on the size of the investments. But investor protection is really something fundamental to enable a market to grow.
Okay, Konstantin?
As for Changelly, as we are actually it's an exchange broker, and we are always looking for our big partners. So if we see, okay, Binance has listed the new tokens, and we see that they passed their due diligence, so they're checking like the community, and also they are asking for some legal opinion. So it shouldn't be a security token. And also, if you are trading on Bittrex, Bittrex is a US-based exchange, and they're also asking for the legal opinion. So that's why we are not listing tokens, security tokens on Changelly. And we are still looking forward for any regulatory frameworks, maybe on Malta or Gibraltar or Singapore. And it should happen next years, I think, because amounts of tokens is becoming bigger and bigger. A lot of ICOs and many companies are going to issue their own token.
Okay.
So disclosure, one of our exchanges is CFE.GI, which is the first, I believe, exchange in Gibraltar, and hopefully the first to be regulated in Gibraltar. And we're really excited about what they're doing. They are really moving a path forward in terms of regulation in Europe. As an exchange, we're quite conservative, so we're just now comfortable listing Ethereum. So just to put it in context, we had Bitcoin, Bitcoin Cash, and now Ethereum's old enough and mature enough, we're going to list it. So that's the sort of rate we move at. That being said, security tokens and ICOs are very far in the future for us before we consider listing them. And they don't have enough liquidity for the customer base that we're interested in and approaching at this point in time. But some of them will do. It gives us the luxury of being able to step back, see what happens, because it's quite an interesting space at the moment. Let other people rush in, and then we'll tread in later. Security tokens seem like an interesting approach, and it does seem that to be the way it's going to be going. So I'm quite excited to see that. We'd want to have a very clear regulatory framework before we enter.
All right, Mike, looks like you get the last word.
Yeah, so we're an exchange. We also did our ICO, right? So we raised 100 million. So we need to step back. A year and a half ago, ICOs did not exist. No one really didn't know what an ICO was, right? How can people know what's going to be in another year and a half, right? Obviously, but one thing which is true is fundraising or raising capital has really changed. Whether if it's a utility or a security, it's truly democratized fundraising, right? So I had the experience of raising from VCs and also raising as an ICO. So when I had to raise from a VC, the handful of VCs actually controlled my destiny, right? So they could have just said, "Hey, you're not good enough," right? Or they can pull the plug. They can shut you down. But the beauty of an ICO is now you can raise from your community who share your vision, who want to support you by buying your token and you can use that capital
Obi
to
Nwosu,
build a
Obi,
platform,
the
and then they
Jedi
can
of
use
crypto
that token
exchanges.
as a
Thank you very
utility.
much for coming out
So
here and
it's
wielding the
a
lightsaber of
wonderful
intellectual
opportunity
perception.
for an entrepreneur
That's great.
to have an option to raise capital, right? That said, we do need to be careful because it is money, it is store of value that you are raising. And in this industry, there's no statute of limitation, which means if your token looked and smelled and acted like a security, it is a security. And a Securities Act is available. I mean, it's in every country. And you might be able to raise capital, but there's no statute of limitation, which means they can come and get you. When I say they, is regulators, local authorities can come and get you. So again, it boils down to what I said yesterday. Get a good lawyer, right? Make sure that when you do a token raise, whether if it's a security or a utility, make sure that you're covered.
Wise words. Well, I want to thank all of you because you guys have really built the bridges that have allowed people to enter the crypto world, and I really believe blockchain is going to democratize the world and bring a lot of freedom into existence. So thank you for your hard work. Round of applause for our panel. Thank you.